Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jamie Campbell, and I'm the Manager, Alumni Engagement, Annual and Legacy Giving here at Georgian College. We'll begin in about 1 minute's time. For anybody that's needing that last-minute reminder, we're about 1 minute out from getting started here. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll begin shortly. Throwing out a 30-second warning here. If you're not back at your computers yet, this is the moment to start making that run to your computer desk. And here we go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for a conversation about mental health. Before we get started today, we're going to begin the session the way we begin all sessions at Georgian College, with an official land acknowledgement. Georgian College acknowledges that all campuses are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Georgian College is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture, and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are so pleased to be joined by some fantastic people today, and I just want to take a moment before we get started to make a quick introduction and acknowledge those folks that are with us today. For those of you that are familiar with our Alumni Association, we are led by a dedicated group of volunteers from our alumni community called the Alumni Association Executive Council, and we have 3 of those members with us here today. So I want to take a moment to thank them and acknowledge them for their efforts in being representatives for our 87,000 alumni around the world. We have Kevin Collins, Hotel and Resort Administration, class of 1984, and Tourism Management, class of 1985. Kevin is the current president and CEO for Easter Seals Ontario. We have Amanda Baserowicz, Development Services Worker, class of 2006, and Addictions Treatment and Prevention, class of 2008. And Amanda is the founder and director for IBI Behavioral Services. We're also joined by Shrivan Pei, Mechanical Engineering Technology, Automotive Manufacturing, class of 2006, and he is a current member of the Georgian faculty in Engineering and Technologies. Thank you so much to the 3 of you for joining us today and helping to represent our alumni community. We're also joined by 2 fantastic presenters who I'll take a moment to introduce as well. But before I hand the mic over to them, I just want to remind everybody a couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. So we are here to have a conversation about mental health, and the 2 presenters will happily receive questions throughout the presentation today. So if you do have questions, feel free to pop them into the chat menu, and we'll address them either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. They'll be most willing to answer your questions, and should we run out of time today, they'll take any remaining questions that are received and ensure that we send out responses to all of those questions with the post-event email. So thank you so much for sharing those questions across, and please don't hold back. They're here to answer the questions. Today's session is being recorded as well, so for the purpose of anybody that would like to receive this later, we'll include the recording as part of our post-event email as well. And at this time, I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers for today. The first speaker is Jennifer Lloyd. Jennifer is a registered psychotherapist with 15 years of clinical mental health experience and established success in innovative program development and delivery. Jennifer understands how challenging it can be to give ourselves permission to add self-care to our long to-do lists, not to mention putting it at the top. As the manager, mental health strategy, she is responsible for promoting a culture of excellence regarding mental health and well-being for everyone at Georgian. Jennifer is leading the implementation of the college's mental health and well-being strategic plan, looking at creative ways to empower everyone at Georgian to prioritize their well-being in order to succeed in their academic and career pursuits. Her favorite self-care activities include reading with her children, hiking, and spending time near the water. Our second speaker today is Kate Henry. Kate is the Mental Health and Wellbeing Coordinator for the Mental Health Strategy and has worked at Georgian for 4.5 years. She started her career at the last class at Georgian and joined the Mental Health and Wellbeing team in 2018 to complete her 4th year placement for her Bachelor of Social Work through Laurentian University. Since then, she has moved into different roles within the department. She supports the Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee in implementing the strategic plan. This includes connecting with the Georgian community in a number of different ways, providing system navigation through the MHWB email, delivering workshops, maintaining the mental health and well-being sites on the student and employee portals, and much, much more. And I know none of you came here to listen to me talk all day, so at this time, I'm going to hand the mic over to Jennifer and Kate and thank them so much for being here. The mic is yours.
Thanks so much, Jamie. And thanks everybody for being here. We're really delighted to join you today, and I'll also ask Kirsten to put in the chat our email address just so that everybody has it in case you want to ask a question that way. So what Jamie didn't mention is that I am also a proud Georgian grad, and I graduated from the Addiction Treatment and Prevention program as well. So I'm really especially happy to be here and just share some hopefully useful information and just connect with all of you in this strange platform where I can't see you, but we'll sort of pretend here. I also just want to say really briefly that as a student, I did my undergrad at Queen's, and that is actually where I learned that I have pretty significant ADHD, and it wasn't until I was at Georgian actually that I sort of got back on my feet and really had that sense of belonging and meaning. And so I really feel like Georgian is just such a special place, and I'm really pleased to share that we've actually completed the development of our strategic plan, which was all set to launch on March the 16th. And of course, that had to be delayed. We did have a virtual launch earlier this fall in October. And what I want to just share quickly about the strategic plan, which is available on our website, is that it's a comprehensive, holistic plan that is really for and by Georgian. There were committee members, and there was just so much input from across our college system, and that really is why it's so valuable. So I won't go into detail about the plan itself, but we love talking about it. So if you'd like to have a whole other session on that, we'd really be delighted. Really today, we really want to focus on how all of you are doing, how you're taking care of yourself, how you're showing up for each other, and just navigating this very strange year. So with that in mind, we're hoping to start with a poll everywhere. So Kate is going to hopefully put the link in the chat. Oh no, she can't do that. I'd like everybody to navigate actually to poll everywhere and tell us what's helped you cope with this strange and challenging year. So I'll just give people a minute. We might think, well, really nothing. This year's been a disaster. Or we might think, wow, this year has brought really special, unexpected gifts. I've heard all of these responses, but by and large, we're all doing certain things, maybe unintentionally, that are actually helping us to get through. So I think part of this conversation is about really bringing those to our awareness and ensuring that we can do them more intentionally. Kate, do you want to describe how people can get into the poll?
I would be happy to. So folks, you can go to pollev.com/KateHenry073 to respond to this question. You're just going to put a word in, and it's going to pop up just like that on the screen as a word cloud. It's going to say things like exercise and family.
Pets, absolutely. Exercise is a great one. Psychotherapist, amazing. Therapy. Yoga, meditation. Knitting, oh my goodness, I've tried to knit and that did not go well. Somebody out there has talent. Connection, I love that.
I'll just add that family is getting larger. For those of you that aren't familiar with how Poll Everywhere works, family is getting larger because that means a lot of people are putting that response in. So lots of you out there, family has been what's helped you throughout this really strange and difficult year.
Netflix, absolutely. Cooking, cats. These are great. Lots of people practicing meditation and hanging out with their pets. That's fantastic. Gardening. I actually created a vegetable garden for the first year, like many other people. I grew about 4,000 tomatoes and not much of anything else. So quite a steep learning curve, but a lot of fun. Painting. These are great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those.
That's awesome. So people can continue to respond in this. I'll encourage all of you to keep the poll everywhere open because we're going to do another poll everywhere in the next slide. But before doing that, I also want to thank you all for taking a moment to share your responses. We're really hoping in this session that you all have the opportunity to maybe learn something new, be reminded of something that you love to do or that really helps you in your well-being, and can maybe schedule some time for you to do that moving forward. So before we get started into talking about ways to take care of yourself, we're going to be having lots of conversation around self-care, and we just want to get a sense of what everyone's knowledge is of self-care. So if everyone can just take a moment and answer this question for us. How familiar are you with self-care? So A, not at all, which is totally okay. We're hoping at the end of the session you will be familiar, at least a little bit. B, a little, or C, very familiar. So we're seeing here that we got 75% that are very familiar and a few that are not at all and a little. And I like to add that a little is totally okay. I would say that a couple years ago, a little is probably where I would be too. And for me, it was actually just learning and recognizing that what I was doing was practicing self-care. I just didn't know that that's what it was. So we hope that you will get there as well by the end of this session.
So I really hope that that this is really useful, and I think it will be for everybody. Even if you're very familiar with self-care, then I am really hoping that this is useful for you. And I really just want to acknowledge that you know, Kate and I work in mental health full time. I have for a lot longer than Kate, but but we, you know, we struggle to put this on our list, as Jamie said. At least I certainly do. The world just somehow keeps getting busier, and I think it's just so important that we recognize that the things that we're choosing to do to take care of our mental health have to be valuable. They have to give us a lot of kind of return on our investment, or else it can feel like, what's the point? So I'm hoping you might try a little experiment with me. I think this might help people to just kind of get in touch with their own personal experience for self-care. Okay, so I'd like everybody to just take a minute. Your cameras are off, so we can't see you doing this. And I want you to find a comfortable position. Sit, relax, take a few deep breaths, maybe close your eyes. And just take a minute to think about a time, a strong memory when you felt really amazing. Maybe you were filled with joy, or you were calm and relaxed without a care in the world. Maybe something great had happened and you were excited, or you felt really lucky about something. Maybe you were getting together with your favorite people and you just felt really loved or connected. And if you have a memory, I want you to really try to imagine it in vivid detail. Where were you? Who were you with? Maybe you were alone. What were you doing? Really picture your surroundings and get in touch with the feelings that you had when you were feeling this way. When you're ready, come on back to our meeting, our session. And I guess I'm wondering if any of you are smiling now, and maybe you weren't before. So I won't say that this works for absolutely everybody. I hope that everybody was able to think of something that really gave them those wonderful positive emotions. I think this is one way that we can, if we're not sure what self-care is, to me, one of the things that it can be is really intentionally doing the things that bring us those feelings, so that we start to have the ability to make choices about what we're doing when we need to do things. So if you've had a terrible day, even just sitting and recalling that positive experience for 1 or 2 minutes, it can actually have a huge effect and an impact. I know that lots of the things that are perhaps in the memories that you brought to mind are not all possible right now. Maybe you pictured, you know, a wonderful day at the beach with your closest friends, or, you know, time during the holidays with close family. And perhaps we won't all be able to see each other this year. So I understand that there are barriers, but even just thinking about these things and recalling them to our conscious minds can really support us to take a break from the days that feel a bit heavier. So I'm hoping that everybody was able to think of something and that you have a hint at what self-care might look like for you. And now I'm going to let Kate talk a little bit about what practicing self-care can look like, a little bit more specifically.
So one thing that I have found and through conversations with other folks is that what maybe worked for you in your self-care prior to 2020 maybe doesn't work now, like Jen was just saying. And it's really important that we check in with ourselves and we make adjustments as necessary. And when we're doing that practice, we are actually doing a self-care practice in itself. So when you're taking that time to check in and making any necessary adjustments to what you need to do to take care of your well-being, you are practicing self-care. So something that you can do is really follow this acronym NESTS. So it stands for nutrition, exercise or movement, sleep, time for self, and support. And so the reason we're talking about self-care is because it's not only just good for you, but when you're doing things to take care of your own well-being, you are going to have more to also give to others to support their well-being. So that's why we have this quote here: you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. So I'm sure many of you heard that quote, and I know it can kind of be cheesy, but it is really true. It's really important that you are making sure that your cup is full before you're supporting others. So some things with we won't go too into detail because I'm sure most people know, nutrition, exercise, movement, a good sleep routine, taking time for self, and support. We saw folks saying that therapy has been something that's been helpful for them. We know that you all know what those pieces are, but they are really a holistic approach to taking care of ourselves. We're taking care of our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our social well-being, and that's so key for ensuring that we're connecting our mind and our body, and we're really having impactful experiences when we are taking care of each other and ourselves. So we hope that with this session and maybe seeing some ideas from the first poll everywhere where people were putting out lots of great ideas that they did to take care of themselves, or even just writing down this nest or taking a picture of the screen you're looking at so you can be reminded of these really key impactful actions that you can do to take care of yourself, that you are reminded of this and can maybe schedule some time. It can be helpful to put it right in your calendar so that you're being reminded to do things for yourself. So we just wanted to thank you for being here with us today, and we hope that you can maybe pull these together into a self-care plan. We do offer self-care workshops for those of you who are staff, faculty, students with us. Feel free to visit the portals, and we do a more in-depth self-care planning workshop, so that's also available to you. And I believe we have some time to take some of your questions if you have any, and I'll pass it back over to Jen.
Okay, thanks so much, Kate. I also just want to let people know about a couple of resources that are really available to everybody. So one of them will have an opportunity to check out at 3 p.m. It's our GC at 3. So this happens daily, and we're switching it up after the holidays, and we're going to do GC at 3 times a week. We've heard from people that they can't actually always make it at 3 p.m. So instead, Mondays we're going to do a morning practice, Wednesdays we're going to do a bit of a longer lunchtime practice, and Fridays we're going to continue with our 3 p.m. So everybody's welcome to join us at that today. But I also just want to draw your attention to a couple of resources that are online. And additionally, if you want to know more about our self-care guide, it was actually published on the Georgian website. So in the follow-up email, we'll make sure that you have a link to that. And the last piece I really want to let you know about is currently there is something called Together All. We'll ensure this is also in your package. And it's a ministry, it's currently funded by the Ministry of Health here in Ontario. And it's basically a really incredible online peer support platform that is moderated by therapists. So it's a way to connect with other people that are perhaps experiencing similar things and share support. It has a ton of information about different mental health problems like depression, so you can learn different things, and there are little mini courses that you can do within the platform. So it's a great resource. It may lose its funding in January here in Ontario, but if you register now, you will be ensured that you have 6 months of access to it. So I throw that out there to everybody. Okay, so we are all ready for questions.
Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. We do have one question at the moment now for you and Kate as well. The question is around boundary setting, and this person notes that they're working from home right now, and they sometimes find challenge with separating their personal life from their professional life now, and they're starting to creep into each other, and so they note that the time that they're setting for themselves, they're often putting aside to deal with work as well during the day. How can they manage separating the two?
So I'll let Kate speak in a minute. I have some ideas. I think this has just been such a challenge for everybody. Many of us have been at home with children. I mean, it really blurs both ways. And I think it's about prioritizing your needs, possibly putting some things in your calendar so that you appear busy, because you are busy. if you are going out for a walk at lunch for 20 minutes, book that in, and say that your time is actually booked, that you are not available. That's one idea. We've had a lot of people talk about this, and somebody suggested that they really miss that drive on the way to work. And they have suggested, bye Kate, we'll see you over at GC at 3, thank you. They've really suggested that people try going out for a walk, even if it's just down their road and back, to almost mimic what it's like to go to work and then go home. So there are lots of different techniques that you can use, but I think in a way it starts with prioritizing our needs and our self-care in a way.
Thanks, Jennifer. The next question asks, it's actually probably an easy one for you. Can alumni take part in the self-care activities at 3 today?
Absolutely, yes. You can every day. So we have really opened this up to anybody in the community. So even if you, and people are really welcome to, like, whoever's gathered around your computer, your dog, your children, your parents, just come one, come all. The idea is that we turn off our cameras and mute ourselves, and then take part in the practice. And typically the time from 2:50 to 3 p.m. is when we kind of can connect and chat. We have a 10-minute practice, and then we sign off. So it's something that we can count on, at least in January, a few times a week.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. The next question actually asks you, what are some of the things that you like to do for self-care?
Yeah, so it's funny because I really admit that it can feel hard for me to put this on my list. And I think I wanted everybody to really intentionally connect with how powerful those positive memories can be, because I think that helps remind us that there's value in doing it. So I really do actually hate the cold, but I love live music. There are different things that I'm missing, particularly now that, we're sort of quarantined again, and, it's snowy outside. So I do try to get lots of fresh air. But sometimes I have an elliptical. I go on my elliptical and I'll watch a live show. I love reading Harry Potter with my kids. I love doing silly things with my dog, like he gets a little bit hyper, and that can be funny to watch. So there's tons of things, but I think it's really about figuring out what works for you, which can feel like a lot of work, because sometimes you have to really test it out and say, is this working for me? Is this worthwhile? Because it's hard enough to put it into our schedule, especially if it's not going to feel like it's helping. So it really is a personal journey. I don't know if that's helpful.
Definitely helpful. Thank you, Jennifer. And we have time for one more question before we head over to GC at 3. And this one comes from Maureen, who mentions that she's heard of self-care kits. Have you heard of these?
Self-care kits?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like Google has just about everything. I think if it can work for you, then go for it. I think you can also make your own. Try to balance it. Try to have something that's good for your mental health, your physical health, something that helps you feel connected to yourself and others. We can send you a template for a self-care plan if that's helpful. I'd hate to see anybody buy anything if it's not going to be what they're looking for.
Sometimes that kit can just include a book, a candle, and some Epsom salts, right, in the bathtub.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whatever. Absolutely. Although I once suggested a bubble bath to somebody who, this was in my early days as a therapist, who had a near drowning experience. So I'm pretty cautious about not suggesting to people what they might try after that.
That's a good call. So we're coming up on the end of this portion of the presentation, and at this time I want to take a couple of moments to thank you and Kate for joining us today, for sharing some of these tips and tricks. I will say that I found the exercise incredibly valuable, and my heart did feel full after participating in that, so thank you for that experience. and know that that all of the speakers that participate in our alumni speakers series, we do make a donation to support student scholarships at Georgian in your honor. So thank you for that. Your time today has helped to support students as well. And now I just remind everybody that GC at 3 will be beginning momentarily, and Kirsten will be putting the link in the chat menu for anybody that wishes to join us over there now at 3 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody.